Hello, I'm here today with Joanne Segars, Chief Executive of the National Association of Pension Funds. We're going to talk about some of the current issues affecting UK pensions, and we're also going to discuss the Pension Quality Mark, a recent initiative from the NAPF. Joanne, can you tell us in your own words about the Pension Quality Mark? It's building up a head of steam. When I first looked, there were over 40 names on the list of members, some of them very recognisable. You must be very encouraged about this, but presumably you want it to spread much wider than just the top few pension schemes.
Well, that's right, and then the Pension Quality Mark does go from strength to strength. We're now at over 60 schemes signed up to the Pension Quality Mark. And I think this is a really important initiative. It is a way for employers to be able to show to their employees that the scheme they have is a good one. And it's a way for employees to recognise very quickly that actually the scheme they have is a good one and it's a scheme worth having. And I think at a time when confidence in pensions and financial services generally is extremely low, this is a really good way to rebuild confidence in pensions. And goodness knows, you know, with 10 million people in this country not saving or not saving enough for retirement, and with the future of pensions being, you know, very much DC, it really is a very important initiative. Of course, it's not just the large schemes that are signing up for the Pension Quality Mark. We've got some very small schemes signing up as well.
Right.
The smallest scheme we have covered by the PQM has only got 7 members, 7 active members. And the scheme covers all sorts of DC provision, trust-based and contract-based. So, you know, a really wide range of schemes covered by the PQM. And I think after less than a year of operation, that's a really good start.
That's good to hear, Joanne. Opinion seems divided as to what makes a good DC scheme. It seems it always has been. Yeah. So how did you go about choosing these PQM standards, and do you think the NAPF has got it right?
Well, we went through a very, very long debate and discussion, and we looked across the industry, we looked at what was going on, and I think we probably have got it about right. I mean, there are the 3 core standards around contributions, governance and communications, and they seem to us to be the sort of core features of what should make a good DC scheme. And if we look across the DC provision in the UK as a whole, it's only the top third of schemes that will meet the criteria based on contributions, 10% contribution for the PQM with at least 6% coming from the employer. And only half of that third would meet the PQM plus standard, 15% contributions with at least 10% coming from the employer. So, you know, whereas some people have said to us, well, you know, the standards are a bit sort of flaky, actually I think they're stretching enough. And of course, you know, this is a starting point. It doesn't mean that this is where the standards will end up, and I would fully expect that actually as DC develops, we'll push up those standards. And as personal accounts come online, or NES comes online, if of course it does now, you know, I suspect that will change the market and we'll see the PQM standards change and evolve.
I can see that the level of contribution is an obvious one to go for. If there's not enough money going in, then there's unlikely to be very much coming out. So let's focus on the other 2, because those do seem to be really important to me. You state in the standards that the required communication level that you set out refers to communications needing to be engaging. Now, many employers try very hard, but take-up rates are often very low in DC schemes unless there's auto-enrolment. Just ignoring 2012 and what may or may not happen for the moment, does the PQM still hit the mark in a scenario where there isn't auto-enrolment, do you think?
I think it does, and we look at it's clearly the most subjective of all the standards that we have, but we do look at what schemes do very, very carefully indeed. And what's been encouraging and interesting is providers coming to us and saying, well, you know, look, we're going to review our standards and our communication standards in the light of what's been going on in PQM. So I think PQM is not just about getting the number of schemes covered by the PQM increasing, it's about actually changing the market, if you like, for standards for DC schemes. And I think we're starting to see that with the communication standard and the sort of ratcheting up of what does constitute good quality communications, which is clearly something you know about here.
Yes. In most of the effort seems to be focused on getting people into the schemes. That's absolutely right, engagement for the future. But what about the other end? That there are people coming up to retirement now who might perhaps be rather disappointed at the size of their pension pot. So have you said enough, do you think, about communication around pre-retirement?
Well, you're right, you know, communication isn't just about something which happens when you join the scheme, and that's why the standards are about what happens when you join the scheme, what happens during your membership of the scheme, the lifetime of your membership in the scheme, and importantly what goes on at the point you retire. So there need to be clear communications about what the options are, if you're going out to the open market, what the options are there. So we've been very specific, I think, in laying down what those standards are. Now, you know, the PQM isn't the be-all and end-all. Clearly there's more work to be done, working with government and their review of the annuities market, working with the insurers and what they do to improve communication. But I think, you know, we've been very clear that actually communication isn't just sort of one-stop shop. It needs to go on throughout the whole time somebody's in the scheme and when they're in receipt of benefits.
I certainly agree with that. Okay, let's talk about the governance requirement. In the case of contract-based schemes, there has to be a management committee in most cases, except for the small ones. But there is a big grey area about the legal validity of governance committees in contract-based arrangements. We all know where we are with the trust-based model. Do you think perhaps that this might give a nudge to the resurgence of trust-based arrangements in the new environment?
I think it could, and I think another big impetus to trust-based arrangements could actually be NES, which will be, you know, this huge trust-based DC scheme if that does get off the ground, if we do see that from 2012. And of course the NAPF has always been very committed to good governance. We've always put a premium on good governance. And I actually think there's more that we can do around the whole issue of management committees. I think it's been quite interesting that we've seen a lot of schemes, contract-based schemes, set up management schemes over the last sort of 12, 18 months, whereas previously employers were setting up contract-based schemes to avoid governance. I think the pen is now dropping that actually setting up a contract-based scheme doesn't mean that you're free of the liability or free of any of the governance arrangements. So, you know, and I think there's actually more that the regulator could do there, and we're certainly very supportive of its initiatives around the promotion of good governance for contract-based schemes. So again, you know, I think the pension quality mark is a starting point. I think, again, we've seen some schemes change their governance arrangements, put in place management committees in order to qualify for the pension quality mark. So I think we are starting to see, you know, an improvement and a ratcheting up of good governance in DC schemes, and that has to be important as we go forward in this marketplace.
Well, indeed, yes. The fees for acquiring a pension quality mark seem quite modest. Not enough to be a barrier, certainly, even for small schemes, from what you say. But how would you answer some critics who might infer it's just another way for the NAPF to raise revenue to finance its activities?
I mean, that's not the case. That's absolutely not the case, and it's not the way. That's not the reason for setting up the pension quality mark, and that's certainly not the way in which the cost structure was established for the PQM. The fees for the PQM pay for the assessment, and they pay for the administration of the pension quality mark. The PQM has been set up as a not-for-profit company, a subsidiary company of the NAPF, and any surplus that's made by the PQM will go back into the pension quality mark to promote it and to support its running costs. So it's not there in any way to subsidise the NAPF at all.
I'd like to thank Joanne Segars for talking to us today about the pension quality mark and the real issue of what to do for future generations in UK pension provision. Joanne, thank you.
Thank you.